people joined up.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at, as people come in, I'll be letting them come, I'll be sort of letting them enter. So anyway, so let's start. So hello, everyone. This is the BEwell Hub webinar, the weekly event that we hold for entrepreneurs, professional freelancers, coaches, and anyone who wants to actually just improve their performance in life, but also at work. Today, we are going to be talking about servant leadership, because leadership is a very important topic. There are so many different types of leaderships, different styles. And so today we brought along David Stevens from Houston, Texas. David Stevens is an ex-Air Force, the USA Air Force. He's a servant leadership expert, coach, and consultant for companies when they need to improve things in their team. And today he's going to be talking about this very interesting topic that I want to know all about this. So thank you, David, for your time, and thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about, so when we're talking about leadership, let's start from the basics. I mean, leader, leadership, follower.
Okay.
Let's talk about this.
Worldwide, what I've seen, because I do some consulting in India, Bangladesh, and other places, but worldwide, what I've seen is people don't understand the difference between a boss and leader. People say, I'm the leader of this group, or I'm the leader of that group, and they treat them like crap. They're bosses, they're not leaders. In my book, a boss is a noun, but it's also an action. A boss comes from bossing. Me, I had 78 employees at one time working for me, all design group. And I didn't want to spend my time answering everybody's questions because they were used to the boss having to answer questions that they came up. The problem is, though, the boss, even though they want to answer all the questions for them, or they'll get in trouble, try to spend their time playing boss, so they're in a lot of meetings. So if you have employees that have a question and they know they're going to get in trouble if the boss isn't the one answering the question, what do? Well, they stop work. And when they stop work, they get bored. So what do? They go and talk to another employee who stops work. And so that just kind of snowballs. And in leadership, me in particular, I specialize in something called servant leadership plus super performance. So the difference being between just doing servant leadership, which is a big change over bossing, adding in the super performance factor. I'll give you a real world example of me. I was able to go from 78 design employees to 63 design employees, doing more projects in less time with fewer errors. Think about that from a revenue standpoint, more projects, and from an earnings project, less time, fewer errors. And that's just on my part. But those fewer errors also meant you had fewer errors in manufacturing. So you put that in there and factor that in, it's an even bigger thing. And so in 2010, we had the blowout in the Gulf of Mexico. Oil rig blew up, caught on fire as a major oil disaster. And in 2010, everyone's revenues in the oil industry and the people that provide product and all that kind of stuff, all of them, their revenues were gone. They were shot. A company I was working for example, when you look at the SEC filing reports for 2010 and 2009, their revenues were down by a little over $1 billion. But because of some other things I did, in the business, more on the upper level side, their earnings were up on that $1 billion loss by $114 million. That's huge. But that's the difference of the method of bossing as usual versus servant leadership. And a lot of people, I don't know how it is over there, but I know how it is over on the East Asia side, and how it's here is a phrase you hear a lot. I can't wait until I'm the boss. And we say, well, why is that? The answer usually is so I can tell someone else what to do. Me? I don't want to tell my employees what to do. I expect them to know what to do. Okay, that makes sense to me. Servant leadership has its origins in biblical days. The origin came from when Jesus Christ washed the feet of his disciples at the Last Supper. The disciples complained, no, you shouldn't be doing this. You know, we should be doing this. And Jesus Christ explained, no, you need to understand I am here for you. So servant leadership changes the focus of business. It changes the focus of the business of empowering employees, not empowering the boss, which is the norm, empowering employees. And when you do that, all kinds of things change. I used to use puns. They call them dad jokes nowadays. But I used to use that with my design group. And at first it caught them like deer in the headlights. They hadn't heard anything like that. But then they figured I wasn't going anywhere. They started doing it to me and other people. In fact, we were going down the hallway, and when people say, hey, which is a common phrase when you see someone here in the States, we would say alfalfa, barley, corn, some other agricultural product. Because hey, H-E-Y means hello, but H-A-Y is what you feed animals. So we just turned it around. And it didn't take long. It took about 6 months, and our global corporate newsletter wrote an article on my group. They started talking about the highly improved design creativity they were doing. And when my employees read that, you could just see their heads go blow up with pride. And guess what happened? They strived even harder to be more creative. That made them more productive. And so a boss, a typical boss, will want to try to attend as many meetings as they can to make sure everyone knows how powerful they are, what their status is, things like that. And they're not around the office a lot. So in that instance where you have people not working, visiting other people, causing them to not work and everything else like that, one of the problems bosses have is they don't meet project timelines. And when you don't meet project timelines, who does that make angry? Customers. And so if customers are having their product delayed, and they may have other entities they're using that product for, that becomes a problem. So when a project's delayed, they'll call C-suite to call in the manager / boss. Why is it late? And the usual answer is, well, my employees just didn't get done. The C-suite responds by saying, well, make sure they do better next time. And the next time, well, they still don't meet their project deadlines. And so they have the same meeting, and that vicious circle goes over and over and over. And what needs to happen is the C-suite needs to get out of mahogany row and go and see what's really happening. Because if they were to do that, they would really open their eyes, because that middle level of management too often believes, well, we're the ones that really run the company. We just tell the big guys what we're doing, and they think we're doing good. But the middle, okay.
Can I ask a question, David? I'll just give you
Sure.
a question. So anyway, everyone feel free to ask questions if you want to just jump in and you got some thoughts on what about leadership, because it's a interesting topic. Looking at leadership as servant leadership, doesn't that sort of, if you're a servant leadership, washing someone, like as you said, Jesus washed the disciples' feet. Yeah. Doesn't that show weakness? Doesn't that show that you could be taken advantage of by the wrong follower if you show that?
Yes. Also by corporate. There was one company in the Midwest called me, and they had it's a big company here in the States, like Iowa. And they had some problems with meeting production dates. And so they asked me how I could fix their company. And I started asking questions about the staff, all the way from the employees up to leadership. And they said, well, we don't want to change any employees. And I said, how can you get change if you don't know what's going on? So servant leaders like me, we place a lot of emphasis on empowerment of employees, training of employees, make sure the employees know what they're doing. And for me personally, what I see a lot is middle management clogging all that up. And you can get more done if you focus on leadership. For me, going in, every time I would take over a new role, I always look for at least 3 people that I could mentor to do my role. Because you never know what's going to happen to you. You get hit by a bus, you're dead. So I always look for at least 3 people. I mentored actually 5 in my role at my last position. And they understood what was going on. Now they have all graduated into senior level positions and various places like that, even in doing their own consulting and things like that. But that's me. And I've got something I can bring up.
But what about the argument where to empower people, to train people, to give them responsibility needs time, whereas you, the leader or the boss or the manager, can get that job done very quickly? Why don't you do it?
Yes.
What's the advantage of giving it out to other people, empowering other people?
Well, the mindset from a lot of people as servant leader, they're working for employees. Why are they doing that? We're better. We're the ones. If I'm a C-suite guy, I deserve the big bonus because I'm the one that runs the company, makes sure everything's going the way it's supposed to go. I'm the brains of the company. But if you think about it, if you have a manufacturing business and you've got all these different groups, manufacturing, shipping, quality, engineering, sales, marketing, you've got all these different groups, right? Companies don't get paid until their product gets delivered to the customer. And here in the States, it's really common to have a 30, 60, 90 pay period where the customer gets the product and they have to pay within 30, 60, 90 days, whatever their account is with accounting in the particular company. But if that product doesn't get shipped, they're not going to get paid. So is a director of finance or vice president of finance more important than the guy that drives a forklift to load the product on a truck? That's a question people need to start asking. And the answer is no, because everyone in the business is necessary and important. The reason people hire employees is to get things done that they don't have time to do. And you're trusting those employees be able to do their work. So we don't hire employees just for the sake of saying, hey, look, man, I've got 150 people working for me. Golly, I must be important. Well, if they're not doing their job, you're not really that important. And so if you're in the mindset of many bosses is if we pay attention to more to the employees, that makes us look weak. We don't want to work weak. We want someone who's going to get these guys going, snap that whip, make them break their backs, get their job done. But you know what? For the last 50 years, yes, I've been working for that long. For the last 50 years, the number one reason people leave companies is a bad boss. Documented. But no one's learned from printed material in magazines, business magazines, even LinkedIn. No one's learning.
But is that a good sign, David? Just, I mean, there's a lot of movement in the employment market now, in the labor market. There's a lot of movement.
Yes.
The
Yes.
millennials are moving around like they're chopping and changing. They're not getting what the benefits, the perks. They're not being treated rightly by their leaders or their bosses. They're moving, which is causing instability in the work market now. To try and find people
Yes.
to work and commit to a company is harder than it used to be. People in the past just, there was a top-down leadership. It was instructions, control, motivation, do it.
Right.
That's all changing now. So if the leadership is changing,
yes.
How do we get on top of that? How do we get the motivation going? How do we get the control going? And how do we?
I'm seeing that happening worldwide, and not just America. Probably not just in Italy, since you're seeing it there, but I'm seeing it worldwide. And we have the thing called the Great Resignation going on. People are quitting. Even older guys, let's say 50s, they're retiring early. I retired early. They don't want to work for an idiot. That's the easiest way to put it. They don't want to work for someone who's disrespectful. That's another way of putting it. And so the whole idea of corporate structures are going to have to change. My business partner and I, we see something that we call the new business transformation. What I see a lot of millennials that are moving to their own businesses, small, some medium-sized businesses, and they're doing their own thing because they don't want to work in the regular workforce because they're treated badly. The other thing about millennials, these are people that are now in their mid-30s or so. They saw their parents come home from work exhausted, frustrated, even arguing with each other, arguing with kids, and they don't want that for their family. They want a better work-life balance. And in the new business transformation, I see the day of the high, what is it? The bonuses that they give themselves at the end of the year. You're talking about in a large corporation, the C-suite giving themselves, in some cases, multi-million-dollar bonuses, maybe high six figures, something like that. And what do the employees get? They get a turkey for Thanksgiving. But, without the employees, they wouldn't have anyone to do the work. And that's the problem that they're finding. They don't have enough employees to do the job. But there is a guy on LinkedIn, and it's called Nomad Capitalist, and his phrase is "Go where you are appreciated," basically, you know. And so he's looking at where places you can go to live, where you're more appreciated, and go where you're treated best. That's what he's looking for. That would be involving in taxes and in various other things too, income or relaxation, various different things.
So, David, just understanding this. So the focus now is on treating the employees better or well. Okay.
With respect.
With respect. And so the business is, what is a business? A business is to produce and to sell and to make a profit, right? That's a
Correct.
business.
Correct.
So you've got the
Correct.
manager or the boss who has to also manage the business, bringing in the revenue and the profit margins and so on, and still also keep an eye on the employees. And so how is that? How can a manager do all of that? It seems a lot on his plate.
Yes. Well, what typically happens in that, you hire a middle guy, okay, mid-level manager, okay, to manage these employees. And if you have a bunch of different groups, break it down to marketing, sales, engineering, manufacturing, accounting, well, you're going to have a different mid-level manager for each of those groups, right? Because you can't have me, 78 employees. I didn't want to answer questions for 78 employees. I couldn't do my own job if I had to do that. And that's why when you put in the super performance component of getting people who are very good at what they do, you don't have to babysit them. Okay. And that's a good way of putting it. When you have employees you don't have to babysit because they're good at what they do, they're going to get things done. It would be my role at that point to make sure I get the right people for the job. I'll give you an example. A boss. Let's say you have a boss here, and he's going to, and on a scale, I'm going to rate all these things on a scale of 1 to 10. A boss, let's say he rates himself as a 7, and he's going to hire 5 employees. What does he hire? Well, he hires a 4, he hires a 5, and in a severe thing, he might even hire a 6. But you know why he hires like that? It's because he wants to protect his own kingdom. He doesn't want to hire, he wants to hire the best person he can, as long as no one has the opportunity to try to go after his or her job. A servant leader, me, for example, I'll rate myself as a 7, just like the boss. But I'm going to hire 6, 7s, and 8s. And when you do that, just with 5 employees, the difference is an entire 8-hour-a-day employee. It's like you're getting an 8-hour employee for free, not at extra cost. When you hire super performers, it's huge. Huge. I was a mid-level manager when I had those 78 employees that I took down to 63, doing more projects, less time, fewer errors. Because that was so large increase in earnings for them. Well, they asked me to lead a corporate level key business objective, KBO, the following year. And I did. And in our company, the history was, well, we don't really have to get these done. You know, they'll go away with us and everything. And that was the history. And here I come in. I've only been with the company for 2 years. I came from a different industry. At one time, I was a design manager for Volkswagen Porsche Audi. So I understand things fairly well from an organizational standpoint and things like that. So they asked me to lead this KBO. I'm a mid-level manager, 2 years of company, different type business. And everyone on the board, on my board there, were directors and 1 VP. And they had 7 KBOs in 2009. And the average KBO for the company didn't get completed in a year. The directions for me were to be 90% complete in 1 year. But me being me, I'm very abstract. I managed to get the leadership done in 8 months. Not only did we get it 100% complete, we already had it tested and implemented and working in 8 months. The important factor to that is here again on the SEC statements from 2009 to 2010. I already mentioned the blowout that caused them to lose revenues of a little over $1 billion. But their earnings were up.
What did you implement, David, to get that done? What was the factor there?
The KBO. The KBO involved every aspect of the company, from marketing to accounting to engineering to manufacturing to quality to shipping and to the customer standpoint, which is interesting.
Okay. From a leadership point of view, or a servant leadership, what was the point, the critical point there that you implemented that got that done?
Well, I already knew that they didn't want to do what David wanted to do, because I've only been in the company 2 years. I came from a mid-level position and I'm working with these other high-level people. But I've done this same project in other businesses, so I knew what I was doing. That's one factor. The next thing is trying to get them to go the way they needed to go, that I knew they needed to go. And so the first day I said, and I already knew my roadblocks, I said, we are going to work on this, and what we're going to do, we're going to work on it in sections. And we're going to do a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. And after we have those, we're going to vote on what solution we want. And we're going to have 2 to choose from. We have to pick one or the other. I am not going to be voting. I will only vote if it needs to be a tiebreaker. And so every time we got there and there's decisions, I said, vote for A or B. And I would push strongly for the one that I knew that they wanted. I'd push strong for that one. So they always voted for they always voted against what I said to vote for, which was really what they wanted. So they actually always voted for what I wanted them to vote for, and they never caught on.
Okay, so basically you got them on board. You got them actually empowering them with making decisions. Is that what it was?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but the decisions I'd led them to, because, for example, the other 6 KBOs that year didn't get complete, which was normal for the company. And so the only reason mine got done is because of the way I led them to think different. And I knew that they didn't like what I wanted to do, so I always pushed what they wanted to do so they would vote for what I wanted them to do. And they never caught on, And it was great. It was fun. It was fun.
Talking about servant leadership, I mean, a leader must know thyself. Okay, you need to work on yourself as a leader first. You can work on the team. So, what do you do? What would you suggest? Because we're all here to understand how we can become servant leaders if we're not already servant leaders. So
Correct.
what can we do? What kind of actions could we take on ourselves, or the way we approach leadership? What can we do to be a servant leadership?
My business partner and I, we have a phrase that we use. Bossism is dead. And it really is. When you consider business the way it's going right now, we talked about the employee issues and stuff like that a while ago. But businesses going the way they are right now, they are going to have a very fundamental change in how they do business to stay in business. Look at Kodak. Kodak was the biggest film manufacturing company in the world. They went bankrupt. But they tried to revive their business. They still went bankrupt. And here's the thing, while they were so busy focusing on film, they had more patents on digital photography, even in 3D digital photography, than every other cell phone company or camera manufacturers combined. But they didn't want to go that way. And
is that because of the leadership, or is it because of the change of market, because they didn't anticipate the trends? What was the reason for that?
Oh, no, it wasn't the market. Like I said, they had more digital patents than all of these other companies combined. It was leadership. This is the way we always done, and we ain't going to change it none. That's the kind of mindset that a lot of companies have, which is unfortunate. And a lot of those companies are having very severe financial issues because of that mindset. And again, like I said, when we hire employees because we need people to do a job. It's not to make us feel like we're bosses or better, look at me, he only has 10 employees and I've got 20. No, that's not what business is about. And businesses, when you get back to the servant leader side of the thing, is not to prove how good you are, because that's when you lose your business customers. It's how well you treat your customers. If you give customers, if you don't treat your customers well, what are they going to do? And they go, well, why don't we try looking at this guy, see what he can do for us, and maybe experiment, something like that. So to keep your customers, you've got to treat them well. The best way to treat them well is to treat your employees well. Because if your employees are producing like they should be producing, if you're using super performing employees, you're going to be outperforming your competition. And if you're outperforming your competition, you're always on time with your projects, things like that, you're going to gain more business, because everyone who's working with someone who's not meeting their timeline saying, I need to do something different.
Okay,
and so
let's bring on the other people here now. Thank you. So we get, it's like 10:35. It's an hour. It's 35 minutes into the webinar. So say hello to Philip, Uni, Jackie. They're on the webinar as well. So the floor is open. If you have any questions, you want to ask a question on leadership, on servant leadership, feel free. Just put your hand up or whatever. You can ask a question. Okay. Philip's got a question for you there, David.
Okay.
David, hi. Nice to meet you. Pleasure.
Right,
sorry for if there's a bit of an echo in this room. I just wanted to ask you if there is, if you're mentoring people to kind of take over some of your work, and if you're basically lifting the other employees, is there a risk that you make yourself redundant as a leader?
Not to me. The reason it's not to me, well, like as I mentioned a while ago, here I am, a mid-level manager. When they asked me about doing that KBO, the first thing they asked me was, how long will it take for you to get someone to take your position? I already was mentoring 5 people. I said, I have 3 who can do it right now. You know what a boss would say? It might take me 6 months, maybe 8 months. When you look at the standard HR thing now, it might even take a year trying to find the right people, right? But I already had someone take my place. They said, great, we want you to do this. And so I brought up one of my guys to take over my place, and he did a good job running it. But see, I had been mentoring the whole time in servant leadership. And today he makes speeches around the country on servant leadership. Today, that company has a leadership academy based on what I taught them. And so they're moving on. Now they've moved up, they've blended with another oil services company, and they're huge and they're doing well.
Yeah, I think it's a good question that you asked there, Philip, because sometimes you feel when you've delegated and you've given out, you've empowered all the people, then you have this feeling of being redundant, and you say, now what? I've given it out to everyone else. Am I lazy? Am I worth keeping on the payroll? Because that's what you think, but maybe. But the questions I think you could ask is like a question like. You said before, who can take your place? Who can step into your shoes? Who can do that better? Or who has more time in this moment to do that job than you? I think those are the questions as a leader or as in a position of leadership is to ask those questions before you take action. Is to say, who can do it? Who can do it better? Who has more time than me to do it in this moment? When you ask those kind of questions, then you say, okay, right, I can see that. And then you take the steps necessary. So the leadership is about using your brain and not using, as I said, it's not using your brain and not using your brawn. It's like we pay you for your brain, and we don't pay you for your sweat. So you decide how you want to be, because if you're in that position, we're not paying you to just be running and doing everything yourself. It's for you to stop, ask those questions, and then look at the resources that you have. I think that's the kind of leadership we're talking about, David. Is that right?
That is correct. One of the first thing I did when I took over that group of 78 is after making assessments and seeing what's going on and things like that, and seeing what's going on, that's one of the link problems with bosses is they don't necessarily know what's going on, and then when they report to their CEOs or C-suite, they don't go down and know what's really going on either, so they take the word of the middle management people. Oh yeah, they're going to be doing this, that's what they said. But one of the first things I did after I got to know my people in that group and what they did, observing, is I started a think tank, not a normal think tank. This think tank was for people that I looked that had potential in leadership. And so normally when you have a think tank, you have someone that's assigned this role, that role, this role, that role, and who's going to, how's it going to work? But I didn't do that. And I told them I had 5 people, and I said, it's up to y'all to decide who's going to have what positions in this think tank. I wanted them to figure it out. And I just kind of observed. I just went to observe. And I let them do all that work. And those 5 people are the ones that ended up being my mentees. And once I had that, of course, I didn't need to spend time on the think tank or anything like that, because I just tutored them and how to think. I involved them in the process. The other thing I did was I changed the hiring process, and I had to. And I did something that most bosses don't do. Instead of letting HR write my job descriptions for me, I wrote my job descriptions because I know more about the people I want than they do. For example, on the super performance part, when I wanted to hire a drafts person, I would hire someone who could be a designer. When I wanted to hire a designer, I would hire someone who could be a senior designer. When I wanted to hire a senior designer, I had hired someone who could be an engineer and even hired engineers to be designers.
So listen, what happens, David, when we have a change of leadership style in a company? So you
Yes.
can, okay, when you recruit people and you already have the servant leadership, it's quite, I think you can implement the servant leadership with the new staff. What happens when you have an existing staff member who's been used to a transformational, autocratic, traditional leadership style, and then suddenly they find themselves with a servant leadership approach? What happens there? How do you deal with that?
It depends on that particular person. They have a choice. They can either go with what the company wants, but unfortunately, a lot of times in big businesses, the mid-level managers say, we're the ones that really run the show anyway. They just do what we tell them we're going to do. And, that's sad, and that hurts performance of the company. But there's a lot of people in that exact position you just mentioned. Me, for example, after I had a success on that KBO in 2009, I was asked to lead a different KBO in 2010. And this was a global KBO for the entire business. And it had been in process for 3 years, not completed. I got a complete signed off by every director of all the divisions in every country in 3 months. The reason it took 3 years not to get done is that particular leader of that group was trying to assign himself a new role above all those people in those global directorships. That's not what they wanted. They wanted to work with their employees the way they wanted to work with their employees. And that was the right thing to do. I mean, you take a guy in Houston trying to tell someone in Finland or England or Italy or Australia or Philippines or something like that what to do. Well, they're not going to take on to that too easily. And so as I was doing the research on how to get it done first, I decided, well, it's better off if they have autonomous. The whole program was to be able to say which engineers can work on what kind of project.
We're looking at leadership, this servant leadership now in a world that's going more and more digital. So
yes.
Now there's the tendency to run teams all over the globe, because it's like, you can work wherever you want. There's no need to be in the office with me, or you don't need to be in the same country or the same city with me. You can be anywhere. So looking at leadership and looking at servant leadership through a digital screen.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work? Because we're talking about like the characteristics of a servant leader, the empathy, the ability to listen to people, being persuasive, and all that. Those are the characteristics I've seen of a servant leader. How is that? How are we able to actually put that through a screen? How are we able to implement that through a screen with teams all over the world, all over the globe?
I'll give you another example, one that is one I did. I led a 5-country design team on a project to build a new vehicle to be made by Maruti in India. But that car was also going to be made in Venezuela and Brazil and Mexico and South Korea. So my design team was in Mexico, India, and South Korea. And we were using very sophisticated technology. We were using, SLA, SLS, which are modeling, 3D modeling. We had 3D modeling, computer systems, and all kinds of things. Anyway, we could work and change files between our locations. We would go and meet. I primarily traveled back and forth between the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas with Juarez, Mexico, where Delphi had a design center because we were working with them on that. And then we got an issue from India. They wanted to do this, make sure it passes one particular test. We had no idea what that test was, none of us from any of those other countries. And so we met in South Korea where we had a prototype car. And I took a 3D stereolithography prototype with me made from my 3D model. I had a custom made 3D computer too. So I took my computer monitor and we went to South Korea. We worked with the other engineers with the other countries, and we put our prototype model in there, and it fit perfectly. And we did our test and went great. But then we asked the engineers from India, okay, what is this test that you want to do? And so they showed us. And when they did their test, the engine was hitting up against that fan shroud that we had made. What they do in India is they drive different. They drive fast stop, fast stop, fast stop. And so the engine is moving and exceeding the capacity of the motor mounts. You know, the motor mounts are very important piece of rubber that keeps the engine from vibrating and things like that. So what we did is we had to paint the engine to see where it was hitting on the shroud. And so we got paint on the shroud where it's hitting. I had the shroud done in the natural epoxy from the SLA. And so we could tell where it was hitting. So I went back, I made a change on the computer. My driver took me to a college, a local college there, because they had an SLS, which was a laser centered 3D prototype, and they grew it. And it took us about an hour and a half to grow it. And then I took that, we went back and we put it on the car, and it passed the India test.
So what was the connection to the leadership? I didn't catch that.
Well, everything we did was digital. Remember, we had Mexico, South Korea, India, and Texas. Well, we also had some engineering influence from Canada with Delphi. So we had 5 different locations that we were working with on the project.
Okay, and what was the connecting point? How was that servant leadership useful with the 5 different points?
People in India have their ideas about what they want. People in Mexico have their ideas about what they want. People in Brazil have their ideas about what they want. People in Venezuela, which we had friendly relations with Venezuela at the time, have their ideas and everything like that. And so everyone wants to push things, but if you listen to, if you're in a leadership position, not a boss position, if you're in a leadership position and you listen to people and where they are, and you actively work with them, whether it be like we're talking right now, or you're seeing them physically, either way, because we work both ways, because you couldn't fly over to India one day and come back the next day and go to Korea the next day. You know, that's not possible.
Impossible. So, I think the important point was there, that in that point was the active listening, the actually paying, you know, the listening was very, very important. So as a leader, is a servant leadership is active listening, or we can call it, I think that's very important. Listen, as we're coming towards the end, I see Uni, do you have a question? We've been listening to David. He's full of, we can let him talk for hours, I'm sure. He's got so much to say. But does anyone want to say anything? Do you want to ask a question? Do you want to make a reflection on what we're talking about here? Uni, you want to say something?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. You're right, Gary. So yeah, about this topic, we can talk for an hour. However, it's really interesting at the beginning earlier, David, you said about what is it? You know, paying more attention as a boss, you know, paying attention to the employees look weak. And here's what I'm saying. And Gary, I don't know if you heard that I have my own business now, and I have 4 employees. I'm starting business. So this is really, really interesting, this meeting. So and you're talking about millennial too, and I'm just like, oops, it's me. I'm gonna say that I'm millennial. So
Yep.
actually, you know, combined between when I've been inexperienced for as a sales, you know, working with the company for 18, 19 years, starting 17 when I was 17. Oh, well, it's not that long. 17 years, I would say. So, right. So I knew, you know, when I'm working with the company, most of my experience, I'm talking about, well, this employee is not good. That's why I'm resigning, and I resign and I moved to the other company. So now I have experience. You know, this is just happening on me, which I'm as a business owner. You know, I tried to combine, you know, long time ago. Oh yeah, my boss, it was just like this, and I learned about something that we learned in another platform that we had, Gary Ecology, right? So talking about leadership, so it's like between boss and leader. So I'm not just want to be boss in here, and I'm learning how to be a leader.
Right.
Try to give attention to pay attention to my employee to make sure that I'm not just a boss to just ask, hey, you have to do this, you can do, you know, you cannot do that, you have to, it's not me, you know. I like to be part of it. And then a few weeks ago, well, not, it's a week ago, so my employees asked me to resign because he said, well, I think I'm not good in this place, mom, he said. And I'm just like, well, I try to give a pay, I pay a lot of attention because, oh, well, at the beginning, I didn't do anything, I couldn't do anything, I can't, and I tried to guide him. And at the end, a week ago, he asked me to resign.
Okay.
And am I actually giving pay too much attention to my employee? Because I knew I've been there, you know, 17 years as you know, working as a sales somewhere in the company. Now I have this employee that they need a lot of, you know, help from me, which is they're very young, you know, 19, 20, you know. I'm just like, yeah, this was me, and things like that. How do you, can you give me advice?
I'm going to tell you a little secret on my going from 78 employees to 63 employees. Out of those 78 employees, 10 of them were temp workers. So I had 68 full-time employees and 10 temp workers. Okay. So when you're working with temporary workers and they get a job, you can replace them the next day if you want to, if they're not doing the job you want them to do, correct? Okay. And it doesn't cost you anything. And so what I would do is, of those 10 workers, I would hire 10 what I would call super performing employees. The thing about super performing employees, once you as a manager has a reputation of hiring super performing employees, guess who you're going to attract? Because you hire the first super performer employee, well, he knows 2 other super performing friends of his. So you already have an instant access to more of them. So now you have 3 super performers working for you. And that 3 super performers become 10 super performers. And granted, they're all temporary, but they all want to go to permanent. So the next step, once I have 10 employees that I wanted to have in my business, I start looking at the least productive my full-time people. And I tell them, because, we still need the other temps to help out with the workload. So I tell my worst performing employee that you need to improve this, this, and this, and what your expectations are, because you have to, especially in being a millennial and being all new in the business and all kinds of stuff like that, you want to be successful. And I've got a millennial daughter-in-law, sharp as a tack, and she wants to be successful. And most millennials I come into contact with are very sharp. They don't want the same thing they saw their parents go through. They want it better.
Well, I got a question for you here. Just thinking about this. If we get super performers into the company, do all super performers want the same kind of leadership?
Yes, they do. Yeah, if you get the right people in there, they're going to be grateful to have the opportunity to perform without being interrupted by a stupid boss. I mean, that's just put it in plain English. Okay.
No, because there are so many different types of leadership. As we know, servant leadership is one, and there are other different kinds of leadership. My question is, are super performers going towards, is that what they want? I mean, we can ask Jackie. Jackie, would you like to, I mean, we have Jackie there. You're young, you're a millennium. What kind of leadership do you like to be? What kind of, how do you want to be led, let's say?
Actually, I was about to leave because I have something coming up in a minute, but I wanted to thank you for all these vital tips, and also on the how to be like a servant leadership and make your employees appreciated. But I just have to leave right now. I'm so sorry for that.
Okay. No,
leave your question though. We can get to
actually, yeah, the question was, you said that people nowadays are going where they feel appreciated. So what can leaders do to make their employees feel more appreciated? Like, what are some tips or things that leaders can actively do?
Short answer, listen to your employees. But there's more involved than just that. So we'll get into all that stuff, and Gary and I will talk about this stuff, and that way you'll have your answer. Okay?
Well, anyway, thanks, Jackie. Thanks. You've got to go. So yeah, that was just the last question of mine. Was do people, I mean, super performance? I don't know. It's a question. Do they all want to be treated or led in the same way, i.e., servant leadership, or are they open to different types of leaderships?
They are going to be open to different types of leadership as long as, and this is a big one, they are respected for what they do. Okay, if you don't respect your employees, you want to treat them like slaves, they're gone. Okay, that's just normal human behavior. But going back to Uni, the issue there is, if you have those 10 contract people who are super performers, those contract people usually want to go and get benefits and everything like that. They want to be full-time employees. So you go back with the 10 temps, 68 full-time employees, and I go with the one that's not performing, and I give them an opportunity to improve. It's going to be their choice whether they improve or not. Not my choice. It's their choice. If they don't want to improve because this is the way they've always done it, gone. Move over one of those temps into a full-time position. Next, and you keep going like that. And so that's why I ended up with 63 full-time employees and no temps, because I was moving super performers where they needed to be, where they even wanted to be. That was the key.
I think this is also the task of a leader, is to know your team, know yourself, know the motivation, the approach to listen, persuade, communicate, be available, be aware of what's happening. And that's a lot of stuff there for a leader. So instead of, it's like, more than doing, it's more being. Like, I mean, if the leader is doing, he or she has no time to actually just look around and be aware of what's happening. So I think that's
correct.
Very
and
important.
that's what mid management to upper management. That's correct.
So
they
listen,
don't have a clue.
we're coming to the end as we're finishing off here now. It's been very interesting. It's an hour. The video is going to be on YouTube. So if you want to go and have a look at it, you want to use it, you want to share it, you can. Thank you, David Stevens, again, for your insights into servant leadership. As I said, it's a topic that we could really go deep into, but we don't have enough time. Thank you, Philip, for being part of this today. Next week, we're going to be talking about, with Stuart Elliott, we're going to be talking about values in business life. Values, personal values, professional values. So if you can, participate. If you see the post on LinkedIn, share it with your contacts, your friends. And again, David, thank you again. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Anything I can do for you, you let me know.
Will do. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Have a good one.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Gary.
coming, everybody.